Hare Krishna, my dear devotees, welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, right here in Hythe, Kent, southeast England, just near the English Channel. We're creating a safe haven here for anyone who is actually interested in becoming attached to Krishna by hearing about him and going back to Godhead in this life. We're dedicating our daily readings to the devotees in Ukraine who are right in the middle of a war zone. We pray for their well-being, their safety, and the deity's safety. This is our kirtan. The leaders of our movement are asking devotees all over the world to chant extra rounds and chant kirtan, to have, kirtan. Well, here in Haven, because we can't have big kirtans, because we're in a little apartment with fussy neighbors and things. So, but this is our kirtan, and Prabhupada said that his recording of these books was his kirtan. This is the Brihat Mridanga kirtan. Okay. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Mahima Stotram from Srila Sanatana Goswami's Sri Krishna Lila Stava glorifies the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. It goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Purāṇa Śrīmad-Bhāgavata Prabho Kalidwandotitaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Mandisdadagamat Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu saduta dayin atini chochata kada hanamun chagadachin mam premna rit kantayos buddha. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All right, we reached the 17th chapter of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, punishment and reward of Kali. Maharaj Parikshit has come across Kali torturing a bull and a cow. The bull turned out to be religion personified, and the cow is the earth. So now, Parikshit has heard from Dharma, personified religion, in the form of a bull. He will not blame anyone for his suffering condition on the basis of the fact that one who points out a culprit, perpetrator, has to take the same reactions. So now Maharaj Parikshit is going to evaluate everything and act accordingly. Begin with text 28. Maharaj Parikshit, who could fight 1,000 enemies single-handedly, thus pacified the personality of religion and the earth. Then he took up his sharp sword to kill the personality of Kali, who is the cause of all irreligion. Purport. As described above, the personality of Kali is he who deliberately commits all kinds of sinful acts which are forbidden in the revealed scriptures. This age of Kali will certainly be full of all activities of Kali, but this does not mean that the leaders of society, the executive heads, the learned and the intelligent men, or above all the devotees of the Lord, should sit down tightly and become callous to the reactions of the age of Kali. In the rainy season, certainly there will be profuse rainfalls, but that does not mean that men should not take means to protect themselves from the rains. It is the duty of the executive heads of state and others to take all necessary actions against the activities of Kali, or the persons influenced by the age of Kali. And Maharaj Parikshit is the ideal executive head of the state, for at once he was ready to kill the personality of Kali with his sharp sword. The administrators should not simply pass resolutions for anti-corruptional steps, but they must be ready with sharp swords to kill the persons creating corruptions from the angle of vision of the recognized Shastras. The administrators cannot prevent corrupt activities by allowing wine shops and at the same time making propaganda for people to stop drinking. They must at once close all the shops selling intoxicating drugs and wine and force punishment, even by death, for those who indulge in habits of intoxication of all description. That is the way of stopping the activities of Kali, as exhibited herein by Maharaj Parikshit, the Maharaja. Text 29. When the personality of Kali understood that the king was willing to kill him, he at once abandoned the dress of a king and under the pressure of fear completely surrendered to him, bowing his head. Purport. The royal dress of the personality of Kali is artificial. The royal dress is suitable for a king or Kshatriya, but when a lower class man artificially dresses himself as a king, his real identity is disclosed by the challenge of a bona fide Kshatriya, like Maharaj Parikshit. A real Kshatriya never surrenders. He accepts the challenge of his rival Kshatriya and he fights either to die or to win. Surrender is unknown to a real Kshatriya. In the age of Kali, there are so many pretenders dressing and posing as administrators or executive heads, but their real identity is disclosed when they are challenged by a real Kshatriya. Therefore, when the artificially dressed personality of Kali saw that to fight Maharaj Parikshit was beyond his ability, he bowed down his head like a subordinate and gave up his royal dress. Text 30. Maharaj Parikshit, who was qualified to accept surrender and whose glories are worthy of being sung in history, did not kill the poor surrendered in fallen Kali, but smiled compassionately, for he was kind to the poor. Purport. Even an ordinary Kshatriya does not kill a surrendered person. And what to speak of Maharaj Parikshit, who was by nature compassionate and kind to the poor. He was smiling because the artificially dressed Kali had disclosed his identity as a lower class man, and he was thinking how ironic it was that although no one had ever been saved from his sharp sword when he desired to kill, the poor lower class Kali was spared by his timely surrender. Maharaj Parikshit's glory and kindness are therefore sung in history. He was a kind and compassionate emperor, fully worthy of accepting surrender even from his enemy. Thus the personality of Kali was saved by the will of providence. Text 31. The king said, "We have inherited the fame of Arjuna. Therefore, since you have surrendered yourself with folded hands, you need not fear for your life. But you cannot remain in my kingdom, for you are the friend of irreligion." Purport. The personality of Kali, who is the friend of all kinds of irreligiosities, may be excused if he surrenders, but in all circumstances he cannot be allowed to live as a citizen in any part of a welfare state. The Pandavas were entrusted representatives of the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, who practically brought into being the battle of Kurukshetra, but not for any personal interest. He wanted an ideal king like Maharaj Yudhishthir and his descendants, like Maharaj Parikshit, to rule the world. And therefore, a responsible king like Maharaj Parikshit could not allow the friend of irreligiosity to flourish in his kingdom, at the cost of the good fame of the Pandavas. That is the way of wiping out corruption in the state, and not otherwise. The friends of irreligiosity should be banished from the state, and that will save the state from corruption. Text 32. If the personality of Kali, irreligion, is allowed to act as a man-god or an executive head, certainly irreligious principles like greed, falsehood, robbery, incivility, treachery, misfortune, cheating, quarrel, and vanity will abound. Sounds familiar. What's going on now? Purport. The principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, as we have already discussed, may be followed by the follower of any faith. There is no need to turn from Hindu to Mohammedan, or from Mohammedan to Christian, or some other faith, and thus become a renegade and not follow the principles of religion. The Bhagavatam, religion, urges following the principles of religion. The principles of religion are not the dogmas or regulative principles of a certain faith. Such regulative principles may be different in terms of the time and place concerned. One has to see whether the aims of religion have been achieved. Sticking to the dogmas and formulas without attaining the real principles is not good. A secular state may be impartial to any particular type of faith, but the state cannot be indifferent to the principles of religion, as above mentioned. But in the age of Kali, the executive heads of state will be indifferent to such religious principles, and therefore, under their patronage, the opponents of religious principles, such as greed, falsehood, cheating, and pilfery, will naturally follow. And so there will be no meaning to propaganda crying to stop corruption in the state. Text 33. Therefore, O friend of irreligion, you do not deserve to remain in a place where experts perform sacrifices according to truth and religious principles for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. Yagyeshwar, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the beneficiary of all kinds of sacrificial performances or ceremonies. Such sacrificial ceremonies are prescribed differently in the scriptures for different ages. In other words, sacrifice means to accept the supremacy of the Lord and thereby perform acts by which the Lord may be satisfied in all respects. The atheists do not believe in the existence of God, and so they do not perform any sacrifice for the satisfaction of the Lord. Any place or country where the supremacy of the Lord is accepted and thus sacrifice is performed is called Brahmavarta. There are different countries in different parts of the world, and each and every country may have different types of sacrifice to please the Supreme Lord. But the central point in pleasing Him is ascertained in the Bhagavatam, and it is truthfulness. The basic principle of religion is truthfulness. And the ultimate goal of all religions is to satisfy the Lord. In this age of Kali, the greatest common formula of sacrifice is the Sankirtan Yajna. That is the opinion of the experts who know how to propagate the process of yajna. Lord Chaitanya preached this method of yajna, and it is understood from this verse that the sacrificial method of Sankirtan Yajna may be performed anywhere and everywhere in order to drive away the personality of Kali and save human society from falling prey to the influence of the age. Text 34. In all sacrificial ceremonies, although sometimes a demigod is worshipped, the Supreme Lord Personality of Godhead is worshipped because He is the Supersoul of everyone and exists both inside and outside, like the air. Thus it is He only who awards all welfare to the worshipper. Purport. Even though it is sometimes seen that demigods like Indra and Chandra are worshipped and offered sacrificial awards, the rewards of all such sacrifices are awarded to the worshipper by the Supreme Lord. And it is the Lord only who can offer all welfare to the worshipper. The demigods, although worshipped, cannot do anything without the sanction of the Lord, because the Lord is the Supersoul of everyone, both moving and non-moving. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:23, the Lord Himself confirms this in the following shloka. Ye pyanya devata bhakta yajante shadayanvitaha tepimam evakonteya yajant yavidi purvakam. Those who are devotees of other gods and who worship them with faith actually worship only me, O son of Kunti, but they do so in a wrong way. The fact is that the Supreme Lord is one without a second. There is no God other than the Lord himself. Thus, the Supreme Lord is eternally transcendental to the material creation. But there are many who worship the demigods, like the sun, the moon, and Indra, who are only material representatives of the Supreme Lord. These demigods are indirect, qualitative representations of the Supreme Lord. A learned scholar or devotee, however, knows who is who. Therefore, he directly worships the Supreme Lord and is not diverted by the material, qualitative representations. Those who are not so learned worship such qualitative, material representations, but their worship is unceremonious because it is irregular. Text 35. Sri Sutta Goswami said, the personality of Kali, thus being ordered by Maharaj Parikshit, began to tremble in fear. Seeing the king before him like Yamaraj, ready to kill him, Kali spoke to the king as follows. Purport. The king was ready to kill the personality of Kali at once, as soon as he disobeyed his order. Otherwise, the king had no objection to allowing him to prolong his life. The personality of Kali also, after attempting to get rid of the punishment in various ways, decided that he must surrender unto him, and thus he began to tremble in fear of his life. The king, or the executive head, must be so strong as to stand before the personality of Kali like the personality of death, Yamaraj. The king's order must be obeyed, otherwise the culprit's life is at risk. That is the way to rule the personalities of Kali, who create disturbance in the normal life of the state citizens. Text 36. O your Majesty, though I may live anywhere and everywhere under your order, I shall but see you with bow and arrows wherever I look. Purport. The personality of Kali could see that Maharaj Parikshit was the emperor of all lands all over the world, and thus anywhere he might live, he would have to meet with the same mood of the king. The personality of Kali was meant for mischief, and Maharaj Parikshit was meant for subduing all kinds of mischief mongers, especially the personality of Kali. It was better, therefore, for the personality of Kali to have been killed by the king then and there, instead of being killed elsewhere. He was, after all, a surrendered soul before the king, and it was for the king to do what was required. Text 37. Therefore, O chief amongst the protectors of religion, please fix some place for me where I can live permanently under the protection of your government. Purport. The personality of Kali addressed Maharaj Parikshit as the chief amongst the protectors of religiosity, because the king refrained from killing a person who surrendered unto him. A surrendered soul should be given all protection, even though he may be an enemy. That is the principle of religion. And we can just imagine what sort of protection is given by the personality of Godhead to the person who surrenders unto him, not as an enemy, but as a devoted servitor. The Lord protects the surrendered soul from all sins and all resultant reactions of sinful acts. Bhagavad Gita 18:66. Text 38. Sutta Goswami said, Maharaj Parikshit, thus being petitioned by the personality of Kali, gave him permission to reside in places where gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter were performed. Purport. The basic principles of irreligiosity, such as pride, prostitution, intoxication, and falsehood, counteract the four principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. The personality of Godhead was given permission to live in four places, particularly mentioned by the king, namely the place of gambling, the place of prostitution, the place of drinking, and the place of animal slaughter. Srila Jiva Goswami directs that drinking against such scriptural injunctions as those which govern the Shotramani Yagya, association with women outside marriage, and killing animals against the injunctions of Scripture are irreligious. In the Vedas, two different types of injunctions are there. One type for the pravritas, or those who are engaged in material enjoyment, and another type for the nivritas, or those who are engaged in becoming liberated from material bondage. The Vedic injunction for the pravritas is to gradually regulate their activities towards the path of liberation. Therefore, for those who are in the lowest stage of ignorance and who indulge in wine, women, and flesh, drinking by performing sotramani yagya, association of women by marriage, and flesh eating by sacrifices, are sometimes recommended. Such recommendations in the Vedic literature are meant for a particular class of men and not for all. But because they are injunctions of the Vedas for particular types of persons, such activities by the pravritas are not considered adharma. One man's food may be poison for others. Similarly, what is recommended for those in the mode of ignorance may be poison for those in the mode of goodness. Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhu therefore affirms that recommendations in the scriptures for a certain class of men are never to be considered adharma or irreligious. But such activities are factually adharma, and they are never to be encouraged. The recommendations in the scriptures are not meant for the encouragement of such adharma, but for regulating the necessary adharma gradually toward the path of dharma. Following in the footsteps of Maharaj Parikshit, all executive heads of state have a duty to see that the principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, are established in the state, and that the principles of religion, namely pride, illicit female association, or prostitution, I'll read that again, sorry. These are long sentences. Following in the footsteps of Maharaj Parikshit, all executive heads of state have a duty to see that the principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, are established in the state, and that the principles of irreligion, namely pride, illicit female association or prostitution, intoxication, and falsity, are checked by all means. And to make the best use of a bad bargain, the personality of Kali may be transferred to places of gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter, if there are any places like that. Those who are addicted to these irreligious habits may be regulated by the injunctions of the scripture. In no circumstances should such habits be encouraged by any state. In other words, the state should categorically stop all sorts of gambling, drinking, prostitution, and falsity. The state which wants to eradicate corruption by majority may introduce the principles of religion in the following manner. 1. 2 compulsory fasting days in a month, if not more austerity. Even from the economic point of view, such 2 fasting days in a month in the state will save tons of food, and the system will also act very favorably on the general health of the citizens. 2. There must be compulsory marriage of young boys and girls attaining 24 years of age and 16 years of age, respectively. There is no harm in coeducation in the schools and colleges, provided the boys and girls are duly married, and in case there is any intimate connection between a male and female student, they should be married properly, without illicit relation. The Divorce Act is encouraging prostitution, and this should be abolished. 3. The citizens of the state must give in charity at least 50% of their income for the purpose of creating a spiritual atmosphere in the state or in human society, both individually and collectively. The principles of the Bhagavatam should be preached, namely A. Karma Yoga, or doing everything for the satisfaction of the Lord. B. Regular hearing of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam from authorized persons or realized souls. C. Chanting the glories of the Lord congregationally at home or at places of worship. D. Rendering all kinds of service to the Bhagavatas engaged in preaching Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And E. Residing in a place where the atmosphere is saturated with God consciousness. If the state is regulated by the above process, naturally there will be God consciousness everywhere. Gambling of all description, even speculative business enterprise, is considered to be degrading. And when gambling is encouraged in the state, there is a complete disappearance of truthfulness. Allowing young boys and girls to remain unmarried past the above-mentioned ages and licensing animal slaughterhouses of all description should be at once prohibited. The flesh eaters may be allowed to take flesh as mentioned in the scriptures and not otherwise. Intoxication of all description, even smoking cigarettes, chewing tobacco, or drinking tea must be prohibited. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Text 39. The personality of Kali asked for something more. Because of his begging, the king gave him permission to live where there is gold. Because wherever there is gold, there is also falsity, intoxication, lust, envy, and enmity. Purport. Although Maharaj Parikshit gave Kali permission to live in 4 places, it was very difficult for him to find the places, because during the reign of Maharaj Parikshit, there were no such places. Therefore, Kali asked the king to give him something practical, which could be utilized for his nefarious purposes. Maharaj Parikshit thus gave him permission to live in a place where there is gold, because wherever there is gold, there are the above-mentioned 4 things, and above and over and above them, there is enmity also. So the personality of Kali became gold standardized. According to Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, gold encourages falsity, intoxication, prostitution, envy, and enmity. Even a gold standard exchange and currency is bad. Gold standard currency is based on falsehood, because the currency is not on a par with the reserved gold. The basic principle is falsity, because the currency notes are issued in value beyond that of the actual reserved gold. This artificial inflation of currency by the authorities encourages prostitution of the state economy. The price of commodities becomes artificially inflated because of bad money or artificial currency notes. Bad money drives away good money. Instead of paper currency, actual gold coins should be used for exchange, and this will stop the prostitution of gold. Gold ornaments for women may be allowed by control, not by quality, but by quantity. This will discourage lust, envy, and enmity. When there is actual gold currency in the form of coins, the influence of gold in producing falsity, prostitution, and so on will automatically cease. There will be no need of an anti-corruption ministry for another term of prostitution and falsity of purpose. Hare Krishna. These are breathtaking purports, uncompromising principles that if the leaders would adopt them, would actually create peace in the world. Mm-hmm. And the situation has become so fallen that just to hear these things make people incredulous. They can't believe that anything that way like that would even be possible. Nor is it, ideal, nor is it something that should be done. Okay, we'll stop here. We're almost at 8 o'clock. I couldn't stop. It was too sweet. We'll start up tomorrow at 6:40. Okay, please, O sages, bring out your reflections. For us to relish. Hare Krishna.
Is this from Rati Manjari?
Hare Krishna, Rati.
Jai Guru Maharaj, thank you for your daily kirtan.
Thank you for calling it daily kirtan.
And from Christopher Kenzio.
Christopher Kenzio, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj,
Welcome back.
My humble obeisances.
Jai Go Prabhupada. Ki Jai.
And from Raikanu.
Raikanu Devi Dasi, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam.
Jai, His Divine Grace Ki Jai.
And this is from Natasja Wessels.
Natasja Wessels. Hare Krishna, welcome aboard.
She says, hey there, I'm from SA.
South Africa? Not Saudi Arabia.
Everyone is starting the day and mine was horrible.
Everyone what?
Everyone is starting the day and mine was horrible.
Oh, your start of the day. Well, we hope that this hearing of the Srimad-Bhagavatam will improve that. Hare Krishna.
And from Sudevi Dasi.
Haribol Sudevi Dasi.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for this daily food for my soul.
Hare Krishna.
And from Anandamurti Devi Dasi.
Hare Krishna Nandimurti.
Dear Guru Maharaj and all assembled devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for today's reading. Today I have heard so many problems of Kali Yuga, this fallen age. I feel I want to do what I can do, as Sankirtan Mahayagya. Yesterday, 2 Bhagavad Gitas, 1 Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, 1st Canto, 1 Krishna book, and 5 small books I distributed during lunch break.
Very nice. Hare Krishna. Listen, everyone. This is a great example. She works full time, but on her lunch breaks, she distributes Prabhupada's books. How exemplary is that? Hare Krishna. Thank you, Anandamurti. I'm proud of you.
And from Sudevi Dasi.
Yes, Sudevi Dasi. Hare Krishna.
She said mind-blowing purports that apply to present days.
Yes, they're so relevant. I don't know how many times when I was traveling a lot and giving Bhagavatam classes, how many times the verse that happened to come up that day dealt with something that really needed to be dealt with in that community. It's like magic. Like the sun shines everywhere, So the knowledge of the Bhagavatam is going everywhere, sorting out people in so many ways. Yes, go ahead.
From Daitari Hari.
Daitari Hari, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for another wonderful reading. We heard in one of the first purports, we read about the performance of Sankirtan Yagya, driving away the influence of Kali. Does this only really apply to the chanting of a pure devotee?
We may or may not be pure, but if we're chanting the holy name and as we are doing, chanting the holy scriptures, which are pure, then it has a positive effect on the atmosphere of the world. Not only does it have a positive effect on us who are chanting, and if we learn the art of chanting offenselessly, we will become pure devotees by chanting the holy name offenselessly. But it also purifies all living beings that come in contact with the sound. So it's not necessarily that every single person who's going to be engaged in the Sankirtan movement is a pure devotee in the sense of being an absolutely pure devotee. But it means that they've taken up the process and they're headed in the direction of being completely pure devotees. And Krishna encourages and gives us strength and gives us direction, dadami, buddhi yogam tam, and gives us intelligence, how to adjust ourselves so that we can become pure devotees. So even if you're not completely pure, if you control your senses and act purely, you will become pure. Hare Krishna.
From Bhakta Rupa.
Jai Bhakta Rupa.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. So much evidence this evening about the power and importance about hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord to protect humanity from the influence of Kali.
Yes.
Quote, Sankirtan Yajna may be performed anywhere and everywhere in order to drive away the personality of Kali and save human society from falling prey to the influence of the age. Unquote. Thank you so much for performing this great Sankirtan Yajna each evening. You make it look easy and effortless. We are also indebted to you here in Wales. You play a big part in all of our lives and allow us to perform our Sankirtan Yajna here way more effectively. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
That's pretty overwhelming to hear. Thank you. I mean, I don't deserve any of that, but it's so encouraging. Thank you very much. I will continue.
From Anandamurti.
Hare Krishna Anandamurti.
I should be always careful not to be affected by all those bad influences of Kali. So daily sadhana and hearing the Srimad-Bhagavatam is very important. Thank you so much.
Thank you for taking your devotional service very seriously. Hare Krishna.
And from Gauranga Gopal.
Gauranga Gopal, Haribo.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I wondered, how can a modern state practically adopt these principles? Say the British government decided to prohibit intoxication. We learned from the past in other parts of the world that intoxicants would still find their way via the black market. So by trying to act religiously, maybe for the wrong reasons though, such a government would create a new imbalance instead. So how could a non-Krishna conscious state adopt these laws and create some actual benefits for the population?
By 5,000 years of transition. You're thinking in terms of changing the world instantaneously. It's not possible. But as these events that are occurring today occur more and more, and as the books go out more and more, and generation after generation after generation come in contact with the books, yes, the world will change. Why do we know? Because Lord Chaitanya said it would. That is faith. And it is not blind faith, because we've seen the world and heard about the world in a state of purity when the Supreme Personality of Godhead was personally present. And these books are literary incarnations of Krishna. The holy name is the sound incarnation of Krishna. So first things first, rather than worry about how a materialistic state is going to transform yourself and transform all the devotees that are with you in Wales. Transform that community. It already is transformed. I couldn't help but notice that most of the reflections come from you guys. Hare Krishna. So that's the process. Continue to do yourself, continue doing it yourself, continue to find others to bring into the community, and also adopt the principles of devotional service, bhakti yoga, And this way, gradually, it will change. It will take many, many generations for it to have the kind of influence that you're hoping for or that you think would be practical. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it and increase it more and more. We have the backing of Srila Prabhupada and all the previous acharyas and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We have that backing. Today somebody sent me a video of a kirtan they had, and everybody was dancing. You could see it. No, new people, everyone was dancing. We've had so many experiences on the street. In 49 years of being a devotee, I've seen so many kirtans on the street from New York to San Francisco to Madrid to, to London, all over the world. And I've seen people dancing in the streets, literally, in ecstasy. So this is just a little glimpse into what will happen in the future if we take this seriously and pass that seriousness on to the next generation and so forth. That's the way to see into the future, rather than be blocked from seeing the potential just because the human society now is so materialistic. Hare Krishna.
This is from Nitya Sankirtan Yagya Das.
Nitya Sankirtan Yagya Das. What a nice name. Sounds like a Jai Pataka Maharaj disciple.
He says, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Always spreading the holy name. Thank you.
And from Dayal Nitai.
Dayal Nitai. Hare Krishna.
Dear Shri the Guru Maharaj, please accept my obeisance. Hare Krishna. Could we say that the value ascribed to gold is yet another human agreement? Or is there something about gold that actually sets it apart from any other earthly material?
It's the modes of nature. Gold is the most valuable, commodity. It's natural. It's natural wealth, natural opulence. Therefore you hear in the Bhagavatam, the Kshatriya warriors were decorated with gold. And even their horses were decorated with gold. They used to decorate the cows with gold before they gave them to the brahmanas for charity. So this idea that it's not practical has just been manufactured by a lot of very intelligent people to create this artificial currency system, and now it's worse than that. There's nothing. There's not even currency. It's just little zeros and pluses in the computer programs. They're deciding who's wealthy and who's not. It's the ultimate gambling, actually, the stock market and all the people who are becoming very, very wealthy from, speculative businesses. I heard someone, who was it, use an example of what was valuable. At first it was gold, and then it was tangible objects, wheat, vegetables, grains, jewels. Those were the, silk. These were the valuable commodities, what made a person opulent. And Prabhupada used to laugh and say, now they're very opulent. Now they eat off plastic, and they have plastic bangles rather than something of real value. and they've been told, advertising. Before, it was called advertising. When it first started, it was called engineering consent. That means figuring out, engineering the atmosphere in such a way that somebody will agree to consent, to have consent to wanting what you're telling them they should want, even though they have no need for it whatsoever. And a whole consumer society has been, constructed around these false principles. That's why it's an age of falsity. We heard in the purport so many times, the age of falsity. So it sounds very complicated, but it's actually simple. These 4 principles of religion, the pillars of religion, must be maintained by avoiding those activities in human society that cause those pillars to be compromised. Truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, and compassion. Austerity and compassion. So these 4 activities, illicit sex, gambling, meat eating, intoxication, systematically, each one of them takes apart those pillars of religion. So it starts with us. It starts with the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Srila Prabhupada, under the guidance of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, created an organization, a society, in which these principles are preserved by the process of sacrifice, by the process of vow, making a vow in front of the spiritual master and the fire of sacrifice and the deities and the community of devotees. And it may not be perfect, and we may not be perfect, but to have that system set up, Prabhupada set it up and it's still going on. And there may be difficulties. Naturally, there are difficulties in Kali Yuga. But still, many thousands and hundreds of thousands of people who are at least trying to follow these principles, and therefore they're creating piety in the atmosphere. And it will spread. Sure to spread, because Lord Chaitanya desires it. And He's the beneficiary of everything, the owner of everything, the friend of everyone. We see here, Maharaj Parikshit is even giving shelter to Kali, such a dangerous person. Because, why? Because he surrendered. It's a principle. Even as evil as this warring that they do now, and the way they do it now is evil. As evil as it is, still, they take prisoners of war. And they don't just, there are barbarians who kill them, but most civilized countries, when they capture the enemy, they capture them alive. But this kind of warfare where they shoot rockets from different places into cities is the most abominable activity. Most abominable. And therefore, as Krishna says, Partha naive hanamutra vinasyas tasya vidyate nahi kalyana krit kaschid durgatim tatta gachdati. One who does good is never overcome by evil. So if we keep following these principles and get gradually more and more people to follow them, it will create a vortex of spiritual strength that is powerful enough to purify individuals and gradually groups and gradually human society. It will at least increase over the next 10,000 years. That is Lord Chaitanya's program. He came to deliver all the fallen souls of this universe. but because there are so many living beings, and many of them don't have bodies yet, they're in line waiting, it fills back up again immediately. Hare Krishna.
There's a second question also from Danitai.
Hare Krishna Danitai.
Is there sufficient gold available to have the entire world's economy functioning on gold coins? Or is it to be combined with some barter system, trading goods? Thank you, your servant.
Yeah, well, that was the original system, yes. But it's not that you're saying, is there enough gold? Well, they had different things. Like in India, just 150 years ago, they had little conch shells, and they used them as currency. And they had different kinds of coins, copper and silver and gold. But, I can't say honestly that I know whether there's enough gold for everything to be gold standard. I don't know that. But I do know that they did use other commodities, other metals, to make different denominations of currency and coins. Coins. And it was harder to transport, and the criminals would have to go to gross means to steal it, rather than now getting on a computer keyboard and hacking into an account and stealing the money like that. They've created a hellish situation where it's easy for people to lose large quantities of wealth, but they're not losing anything. It's so ironic, so paradoxical, what's going on now today. But it does have some value, because the way the situation works, you can buy a car, you can buy a house, you can buy different things with the, account money, that so-called money that you have in your account. So it works. It's a system of bartering, but it's not ideal, and it promotes falsity, and promotes nepotism and malice and all these different irreligious principles. But eventually there's a cycle, and eventually it has to come back to the original situation in the Satya Yuga, where the natural gifts were the measure of wealth, and the barter system. And anyway, we read about it in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is only 500 years ago. You can read the system, read about the system and how it worked. Hare Krishna.
He says, many thanks for your elaborate and very helpful responses.
Hare Krishna.
And from Vrajaloka Devidasi.
Hare Krishna Vrajaloka.
Hare Krishna, dear Guru Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to you and your daily kirtan. Today was very encouraging to hear how the Lord gives protection to the person who surrenders unto Him. In this situation, it was so nourishing to hear about that. In today's reading, I was struck by the following few lines. This age of Kali will certainly be full of all activities of Kali, but this does not mean that the leaders of society, the executive heads, the learned and intelligent men, or above all the devotees of the Lord, should sit down tightly and become callous to the reactions of the age of Kali. Can you say a few words about how we need to understand this?
Yeah, it means you have to stop following the rules of Kali. That's what this movement is about. That's what the movement is for. The Bhagavad Gita teaches us how to live in goodness and eventually how to surrender to Krishna in pure goodness. So what we can do is to follow the principles. We made vows, especially those of us who are initiated. We made vows, and maybe we haven't kept them completely strictly, but eventually we do. We have to follow them strictly to be able to go back to Godhead. So yes, that's what we should do. We shouldn't be callous to the fact that it's going on. We should not participate in it as much as possible, at least by following these four regulated principles ourselves and encouraging others to do so. These books are not stories. They're not mythology. They're not just, euphemistic ideas for armchair speculators. They're actually the history of the universe. We can learn how people lived and how they used the natural resources in order to live in a peaceful way, a natural way, without polluting the air, without polluting the water, without polluting the food, by all kinds of genetic engineering and artificial ways. Nobody's becoming happy. The atmosphere is not becoming happy. It's not becoming peaceful. There's more dissension and fighting among different groups and different, genders and nationalities and races and political systems than any time in the world. And it's just about ready to explode again, and they can't learn. So we have to show the example. That's what it means, that we should not be callous to these things just because they're going on. We should not participate in them, at least as much as possible. I mean, we have to eat, we have to have a roof over our head, we have to clothe ourselves, but we use these technological advancements for spreading the kirtan, like we're doing now in our daily readings. This is the Sankirtan movement. It's to use the things that have been created by the energy in the service of the Lord, to give it back into the service of the Lord. In this way, the Lord, at least the Kali Yuga is held back, and it will improve, over the next 5,000 years. In Ukraine, they have the biggest temple, the largest facility in terms of a temple building in all of Europe. Think about it. Hare Krishna. We just have to become serious. We have to become sincere and serious. And Krishna will send other people who are sincere and serious and are questioning the values of what's going on today. And with that, we have to stop. It's getting too late. I thank you again and again for these lovely reflections, especially from the Welsh boys and other places, Osaka, Budapest, and other places. Your reflections are invaluable and encouraging to everyone. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow night, same time, same place, same topic. The ever increasing glories of the Krishna consciousness movement. Hare Krishna. See you tomorrow.